Last week, we overlooked something of a milestone, kids. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Last week, I was so caught up in producing the episode that I neglected to note that, in fact, last week's episode was my 250th published podcast episode. Now, depending on which article you read out there on the interweb, your average podcast either stops at about episode 7 or episode 10, something like that. Most podcasts, and there are like 5 million of them now, most podcasts don't really get past double digits. And so to have reached episode 250 feels like something worth talking about. And it's okay that I didn't do it last week because it sets up a useful object lesson for a New Year's episode about a couple of my favorite things, which are accumulation over time and improvement over time. Episode 250 last week, right on the cusp of New Year. It is synchronistic, it is timely, and I shall attempt to wax semi-eloquent about it after we do the thing. Shall we persist with our holiday poetry extravaganza? This is it, all right? This is the last episode of 2025. If you're listening to it now, it's the first episode of 2026 if it's New Year's Day. This is releasing on New Year's Eve, so it depends on your context. But I've enjoyed the holiday poems that we've been sharing over the past few episodes. And this is the last one. And as it's New Year's, either New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, what poem could we possibly use except Auld Lang Syne? And if you are listening to this on New Year's Eve, I'm doing you a public service, kids, because nobody knows the damn words to Auld Lang Syne. And so if you're listening to this before you go out to your New Year's Eve party, and I gotta tell you, I've seen some horrendous stuff. I've seen some horrendous stuff on New Year's Eve. I've seen some cool stuff on New Year's Eve too, by the way. Where I live in L-Town, they have a massive party at Victoria Park downtown. The city puts it on. And depending on your estimates, somewhere between 5,000 and 15,000 people may be found in the park. On New Year's Eve, I have had the very good fortune and privilege to perform twice at the big New Year's Eve thing, once with Hearts, and we opened for Finger 11 that night in Victoria Park. And I don't know, 5,000 people, 10,000 people. Some people say 15,000 in the park. I don't know, but it was the biggest audience I had ever played to. And that was a full-on blast, man. And they had heaters on stage. And the piping for the heaters ran on either side of the drum kit that I had set up. And so I was toasty that night. Very, very cool. And how fun to play for an audience like that. And backstage, I got to chat with Steve Malella from Finger 11, the drummer. Got to talk drums a little bit. And at one point, we snuck up into the headliner dressing room to drop off a couple of Bone Music CDs, which had recently been recorded. Leave them for Finger 11, leave them for management, just in case, giving Destiny an opportunity to intervene. And there was nobody around. There was not a soul or a thing to be found in the headliner dressing room except one big bottle of Jack Daniels. And ain't that just rock star stuff, kids? And so that was really fun, and Hearts played great, and that was a really cool night. And then the other time, a couple years ago, Lindsay and the Lonelies appeared on the big stage on New Year's Eve. Also, a really swell time. No heaters, though. No heaters. That was a cold one. Not easy to play drums with cold hands. Harder to play guitar with cold hands. But that was a swell time and a lot of fun. And I just really dig playing for a big audience, man. I haven't had a lot of opportunities to do that. I've had some. You start getting into multiple thousands. That really is a thing. And I think again about that dude all those years ago who trembled stepping onto a 1-foot high stage to play for 30 friends. You fast forward through just years and years of experience and facing fear. All of a sudden you can walk out on New Year's Eve to, let's say, 10,000 and just go, man. No nerves at all. Just play. That's the effect of pushing through fear, facing fear, making yourself vulnerable, developing that new shell, and then you become the sort of person who can. 15 years ago, I was not the sort of person who can walk out and play in front of 10,000 people without any nerves. Through the experience, through pushing through fear, through becoming the sort of person who can play in front of 30, 50, 100, 200, eventually you get there. And then you realize how fun that is and how capable you are. And that is still my message for everybody. Push through the damn fear. You know what you want. You know what you want. And if you are not having it, not experiencing it because of fear, push through the damn fear. But I've also seen some wild stuff on New Year's Eve. You ever go to one of those like New Year's Eve banquets? You go to a party. You paid $20 for a ticket, you go with a group of friends, and then all seems well until the stroke of midnight, in which case everybody's tongue comes out. Not mine. Everybody else's tongue comes out, and that's an horrendous thing to see. It's like when The Simpsons shows you a gross kiss, and it's just like lips just fill the screen. Look around you. It's horrendous. And that's a thing you do in your 20s, okay? When you reach your 50s, you don't go to one of those $20, $25 New Year's Eve parties with a DJ, because at the stroke of midnight, it's awful. Much rather be on a stage in front of 10,000 people than watching 50 drunk couples just lock faces in the shadows in some banquet room. Gross, man. But I'm doing you a service if you are listening to this on New Year's Eve. Because on the stroke of midnight, wherever you are, whether you're at a private function, whether you're out at some public thing, whether you're just home, watching it on the TV, someone is going to start singing Auld Lang Syne, and you don't know the words, because nobody knows the words. Everybody knows the first line. Should old acquaintance be forgot? That's where it ends. That's where it ends for everyone. So if you're listening now, pre-party, I'm setting you up to be the one person in the room who may actually know the words to Auld Lang Syne. Auld Lang Syne was initially a poem. It was a poem by the Scottish legendary poet Robert Burns. Robert Burns, the poet laureate of Scotland. 1759 to 1796, and he penned the words to Auld Lang Syne based on an earlier Scottish folk song that was sort of passed down orally by tradition. And Robbie Burns picked that up and actually made something formal out of it, and then they set it to a tune, and it became the song you sing at Hogmanay. Hogmanay, however they say it, Hogmanay, which is the Scottish end of the year celebration. And then over time, that became a tradition in Scotland, and it leaked into other parts of the British Isles, and then people from the British Isles brought that to North America, and it became here and around the world the song you sing on New Year's Eve at the stroke of midnight, but nobody knows the damn words. So I'm going to do the words for you right now. The question is, do I do the words, do I recite this poem with a Scottish accent, with a bad Scottish accent, or do I try to do it in my normal reading a poem voice? And as it's New Year's Eve or New Year's Day and we're having a bit of fun, I can make the attempt in a bad Scottish accent, but I feel as though the effect will be lost. But these are the actual words written about, well, this is an update. This is a modern English of what Robbie Burns wrote back in the late 1700s based on an earlier Scottish folk song, Auld Lang Syne. Auld Lang Syne is, I guess, Old Scottish, we'll say. And it more or less translates to Auld Lang Syne or for old time's sake. So it's about the past. It's about the old times. And so here we go. Robbie Burns, Auld Lang Syne, your poem for New Year's. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and Auld Lang Syne? For Auld Lang Syne, my dear, for Auld Lang Syne, we'll take a cup of kindness yet for Auld Lang Syne. I don't think it works with the Scottish accent because you're listening to the accent and not listening to the words. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and Auld Lang Syne? For Auld Lang Syne, my dear, for Auld Lang Syne, we'll take a cup of kindness yet for Auld Lang Syne. And surely you'll buy your pint cup, and surely I'll buy mine. And we'll take a cup of kindness yet for Auld Lang Syne. We too have run about the slopes and picked the daisies fine, but we've wandered many a weary foot since Auld Lang Syne. We too have paddled in the stream from morning sun till dine, but seas between us broad have roared since Auld Lang Syne. And there's a hand, my trusty friend, and give me a hand of thine, and we'll take a right goodwill draught for Auld Lang Syne. And there's a hand, my trusty friend, and give me a hand of thine, and we'll take a right goodwill draught for Auld Lang Syne. For Auld Lang Syne. But they only ever do the first verse, right? Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and Auld Lang Syne? For Auld Lang Syne, my dear, for Auld Lang Syne, we'll take a cup of kindness yet for Auld Lang Syne. And by that point, if you're in the wrong room, it's just a snake fest. It's just a snake fest. It's just tongues and slobbering, and it's grotesque. And you're like, if these are the good old days, I'm out. I'm checking out, man. It's gross. But it's kind of fun to be in a more dignified room. People are hugging each other, and people are toasting, and people are sharing a drink. And we really do have, don't we, this fascination with New Year's Eve. We have this fascination with the end of an old year and the beginning of a new. And there is in that moment, there is in that experience, this sense of a clean slate. And I've told you a zillion times, New Year's Day is my favorite day of the year. Normally, New Year's Day, I indulge the simple, quiet, reflective reverence of the day. It is typically a quiet day. And normally I would go for a walk through my neighborhood and just absorb the silence of the day, the quiet, majestic reverence of the day. And I'd think about what's to come. And I would set myself to being the best that I could be, even just for those few moments. Going to be different this year. Going to be a much noisier New Year's Day for me this year, but I think no less substantial and no less significant and no less my favorite day of the year. I'll talk about that later. Up to something. Point is, we do have this reverence for New Year's Eve. We do have this reverence for New Year's Day. And it is my favorite day of the year. I love a blank slate. And this whole 250th episode thing plays in very nicely because a lot of you are going to be out there on New Year's Day, possibly even today as you listen, thinking about what you want the year to be, thinking about stuff you would like to accomplish, thinking about New Year's resolutions, because a lot of us carry them. I don't really have New Year's resolutions. It's not really my bag. I do kind of recommit myself to stuff I do have stuff that I every year kind of choose to focus on. This year's an interesting one. I mean, my life is in such a state of flux. So much is changing, so much has yet to change. There's a lot that's out of balance, there's a lot that's upside down. And it's hard for me to kind of nail down resolutions. But I'm always trying to be just a little bit better. I'm always trying to be just a little bit more compassionate. I'm always trying to be just a little bit healthier. And that's kind of an ongoing process. This year, my contract is about to end. I'm not quite sure what the job situation is going to be. I'm not sure what my living situation is going to be. I know there's going to be a lot that changes. And there's going to be some stuff that changes in the most wonderful, joyful, easy way that is going to change my life in extraordinary and wonderful ways. I know that's going to happen. I don't know when, I don't know how, but I just know it is. And I know there's going to be a lot of change, and it's very difficult to kind of set yourself to a course of action when you're in the midst of such flux. One of the things you can resolve is to just meet that flux with faith, meet that flux with endurance, meet that flux with openness, meet that flux with a commitment, let's say, to your dignity, to ride that wave, to flow with life. And that is an ongoing thing as well. If there's a specific, I'm thinking one of the things I would like to do this year is reestablish my connection to the drums. My connection to the drums has suffered a little bit this year. I'll be honest about that. I dedicated myself pretty diligently to drums for about 13 solid years. That's not just playing gigs. That's practicing every day. That's trying to improve. That's trying to bring up my skills and my knowledge. I was teaching a little bit. And then there were periods of time where I was playing a lot of gigs, especially pre-COVID. And I found in the past year that my relationship to the drums has suffered somewhat. My relationship to music has suffered somewhat. That's partly a product of suffering more generally with some of the other stuff that's been going on. It's partly a product of going back into the regular work world and having less time and less energy to dedicate myself to the instrument. And I feel as though I hit a bit of a wall in terms of my development. I feel as though I got as far as I kind of can take myself without a whole lot more diligence, and the energy's kind of not been there. And then music has been in such a state of flux as well since the pandemic. And I played some really terrific gigs last year, and I really enjoy the people I play with. That's not the issue. But it's hard when you are torn a little bit. I'm working full time, doing the podcast. It's like music has had to accept less of a role in the past year than it's had in the previous 10, certainly. And I feel as though I lost a little bit of my fire. I feel as though I lost a little bit of my fire for everything, actually, except maybe pickleball. Otherwise, it's been a period of endurance. It's been a period of just treading water, if we can do drowning lessons. It's been a period of just trying to keep my head above water. It's been a period a lot of times of just surviving. And it's hard to thrive when you're just surviving. I'm hoping that in the new year, some stuff will shake down. Some stuff will give me a little bit more stability, a little more impetus. And I'm hoping that I can rekindle in the new year my connection to the drums. I have not been playing much. I will confess that to you. I haven't really been practicing at all. And it bothers me because it's so much a part of my life. I went back in preparation for this episode and read through sections of tour blogs that I produced in 17, 18, 19, going back to my headspace then about trying so diligently to develop a career in music and to improve as a drummer and be more worthy of the chairs I was getting. And I could see at that point in time, 2018, 2019, I could see the potential for a career in music. Even at my level as a player, I could see how it was possible. And so there was a lot to aspire to. There was a lot to strive for. There was a lot to practice for in those days. And then the pandemic came along and really knocked that off the rails for me. I became, once again, mostly a local player when you could even be one. There was a couple of years where you kind of couldn't be a player at all for the most part. I became more of a local player again, and I had to shift where I hoped or thought music was going, what sort of role it would play. And that was the legacy of the pandemic. And then you take on a full-time job. It's like your focus shifts. And it's like, I don't know if touring's in the future for me or not. I really hope it is. And now that my contract is ending, I'm available. But it's like I lost some of the impetus. I struggle to keep up with things when the impetus isn't there. And so for me, one of the resolutions is to reestablish the simple love of playing the drums. You lose that when you're aspiring to play a lot and to play full time and to be a quote unquote professional. You lose that because it becomes the business, it becomes the game, it becomes a little bit more mechanical. You can lose touch with what you love about playing the instrument when you're just wrapped up in getting gigs and prepping for gigs, and maybe you don't even enjoy the music all that much, but you got to get paid. And you can lose your connection to the instrument. It becomes more of a means to an end than an end in itself. And so part of my game over the next little while is going to be just to kind of get quiet and return to my basement, and while I still have one, and try to reestablish a connection with the drums and begin to think again about what place that's going to have in my life now. And I don't know. It may have a huge place. The best may be yet to come with that. I don't know. Or maybe it becomes or continues to trend towards hobby zone, which is a pretty damn cool hobby to have, actually, and still opens a lot of doors for me and some really cool experiences, and that's great. But it's like I have to rekindle that passion. You know, one of the things that happens when you are surviving over thriving is that your passions can dissipate. You're just holding on. I've done a reasonably good job of maintaining when it comes to music. Wouldn't say I'm thriving, though, and I would like to get back to what I loved about it. What I loved about music, and that's taken me back 20 years when I picked up the drums again after not playing them for a decade. It's like, can we go back there and feel that again and begin to rekindle what's in me? I'm not the greatest drummer in the world, but I still feel like I can play with a certain amount of passion, and I can bring a certain amount of that into the music. But I got to recapture it. So as terms of New Year's resolutions, that's one for me. Reestablish my relationship with drums and with music, begin to feel that fire again, which has been hard for me to keep going because life. Well, the thing is, and the point of all of that is that a lot of you are going to be setting yourself to resolutions. You're going to be setting yourself to self-improvements. You're going to be setting yourself to projects. You're going to be setting yourself to dreams. And I hope you do. And the 250th episode thing is an illustration of a really, really important thing, which is accumulation over time, improvement over time. So if I had set out 6.5, nearly 7 years ago, saying, I'm going to produce 250 podcast episodes, I would have stopped before I started, because that is an overwhelming thing. Nobody sits down to produce 250 podcast episodes. If you set that as your goal, you very quickly become overwhelmed at just the sheer scope of it, especially when you start putting together episode 1. You realize what goes into that, and you can overwhelm yourself, and you can very quickly go off track. You can just lose your heart because it seems impossible. And so it is if you are one of those people who are going back to the gym this January for the first time in a long time. And maybe you got 30 pounds you want to lose. And that just feels overwhelming because that's going to take a long time. It's going to take a ton of work. And it's like setting that as your target is admirable, but don't focus on that, right? The focus is on the micro. The focus is on, I'm going to the gym today. The focus is on, I'm going to eat better at this meal. The focus is on, I'm going to lose 2 pounds, right? And then over the course of 6 months or a year, you accumulate those 2-pound weight losses. And eventually you wake up one day and you realize you lost the 30 or you lost the 50, whatever it is that you're trying to lose. You don't lose it all at once. Same thing when I was writing. when I was actually producing work. It was like, I'm not sitting down to write a 300-page novel. I'm writing down a paragraph today, or I have a daily quota of a page or 2 pages. And you just show up, like in Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art. You just show up every day and you do the work. And what happens when you just micro-focus on the work, day by day by day by day, session by session by session by session, is that eventually all of those little sessions, all of those micros, they accumulate. And then all of a sudden you wake up and a couple months later you've got 50 pages, and then you've got 100 pages, and then you've got 150 pages. You didn't set out to write 150 pages because that will stop you in your tracks. It will stop you before you start because it's too much. It's overwhelming. One workout at a time, 1 page at a time, sometimes even 1 paragraph, even a word at a time. Those of you who are writers know what I'm talking about. Or you're setting out to write an album this year. That's a wonderful ambition. That's a wonderful aspiration. And it's overwhelming. How am I going to get 10 songs? I don't have 1. You don't. You sit down and you say, for an hour a day, let's say, as an arbitrary number, I'm just going to work on writing. And for the first 30 days, you might finish 1 damn song in that 1 hour a day. Or the next month, you might get on a hot streak and knock out 4. You can't get it done until you prime that pump. You got to sit down and do the friggin' work. But if you think I'm going to write an album, that can be overwhelming. But if you're going to sit down and say, I'm just going to write for an hour today, fiddle some lyrics, work a couple melodies, try a few chord progressions, and then you just did the work. And then you stop. Even if you didn't produce anything, but you sat down, you put in the time, you fiddled, you threw it all away, that's fine. That's part of the process. You're in the process of writing your album. And you don't get overwhelmed. You congratulate yourself. You celebrate. Got to celebrate, kids. Celebrate as much as you can. Celebrate as much as you can in those fierce, beautiful ways that you celebrate. You did the work. Great. Tomorrow you do the work again. Next day you do the work again. You do the work again. And somewhere along the line, at the end of doing that little chunk of work every day, you accumulate the body of work. I did not set out to do 250 podcast episodes, but over time, week by week, doing the work, doing the grind, all of a sudden, you sit up and you go, I've got 250. That is a body of work. Whether you think it's any good or not the point. The point is the work is done. The legacy is created. And a lot of people go into their New Year's resolutions trying to do the whole damn thing at once, especially if it is a project with a specific beginning, middle, and end. If you're just talking about self-improvement stuff, that's a day-by-day thing anyway, right? Flowing with life, allowing, detachment, whatever. You can have daily practices, you can have daily meditation, whatever, daily yoga. You can have practices that feed into those ambitions, that feed into those resolutions, but they're a little more amorphous. They don't quite have the same frame around them as a project like losing X number of pounds, or writing a book, or writing a poetry collection, or starting a business, whatever. If you've got something with those real defined parameters, don't go into it trying to do the whole damn thing at once. You do it piece by piece. Slow accumulation over time. Doesn't overwhelm you, work gets done, and then you have these pleasant surprises where you wake up and you're like, holy, we got 100 pages now. Cool. Or we've got 3 songs in the bag. Amazing. Or we've got, if you're starting a podcast, we've got a little bit of a track record. We've got 3 or 4 months in, we've got a dozen episodes. We're getting somewhere. And that is an important thing to do with your New Year's resolutions if you have them. Don't try to accomplish the whole thing in one go. For the most part, it can't be done. That's working on your pickleball short game. All right, well, I'm going to do that a couple hours a week. I'm just going to get a court or go to drill sessions, work on the short game, right? And it doesn't reach peak level overnight. It takes time. But you look around at all these 4.0s and 5.0s you're playing, and they have this great short game. You're like, I'll never get there. Well, no, you won't overnight, but you will in 6 months if you just take an hour or 2 a week and work on that short game. And it applies everywhere. I think people just tend to overwhelm themselves trying to do it all at once. That's a classic story among people who return to the gym. People return to the gym like, I'm going to lose 30 pounds, I'm going to have abs, and they try to work out an hour and a half every friggin' day, and 3 days in, they're half dead because A, they're not in that kind of shape, and B, their body hurts so much. And at the same time, they're cracking down on their diet in insane ways. It's taking all of their time and mental energy to make that happen. And within a couple of weeks, it burns out because you're trying to do it all at once. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just do the work every day, right? Do it in a manageable way. And over time, it's like interest in your RSP. At least it used to be. It accumulates over time, right? You just put in the work, focus on the day's work, and over time it accumulates, and over time you improve. So it is with your pickleball short game. Over time, with the repetition, you improve. So it is with your drumming, your double strokes. They get better over time with the repeated practice, all right? You're not going to have a world-class double stroke roll in a couple of days. And if you think you're going to, or if that's your goal, then you'll become very frustrated and disappointed very quickly when you're 2 practice sessions in and your double stroke roll still sounds like mine. Give it 6 months of just repeated work over time. I'm belaboring the point already, but I think the 250 episodes illustrates the principle in practice. You listen to this episode, it's way better than number 1. That's not a fair comparison. It was a different show and a different style of show. Compare this one to episode 50 or episode whichever one was the first solo episode. It's much better now. That's the product of improvement over time, which is the other side effect of repeated daily practice, or in this case, repeated weekly practice. It gets better over time. You can't go from 0 to wherever we're at now in 1 or 2 episodes. It takes the 200 episodes that I've done to get from there to here. So you accumulate over time improvement and a body of work. And those of you who are embarking on projects this year have things in mind. I just want you to bear that in mind, all right? Do not try to do the whole damn thing at once. If you're going to eat that 96-ounce steak, you don't eat it in one bite, okay? One bite at a time, over time. And then one day you wake up and you've got 250 podcast episodes for whatever it's worth, or you wake up and you've got a 280-page novel that's finally done, at least a draft, or you've got that record written, or you've done that poetry collection, or you have learned that song or a group of songs you wanted to learn on guitar, or you have developed that double stroke roll to where you want it just by doing repeatedly that practice over time. And so that's my message to you. But you don't have to take it from me, right? 250 episodes is an illustration of principle in action. You could take it, if you like, from esoteric wisdom. That is a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, you know as well as I do. That comes from the Tao, which is my favorite spiritual text. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a simple step. And then you accumulate those steps. You just keep accumulating the best damn steps you can. One day, you've completed your journey of 1,000 miles. It takes a great deal of patience. That's the other thing. Be patient. You have to learn patience sometimes in some scenarios, but you have to trust that with the repeated work, with the repeated commitment, the patience will be rewarded with whatever it is you're looking for. And you have to begin. That's the other thing. Like I've talked to people about podcasting. They don't know what their idiom is. They're not quite sure what their style of delivery is yet. It's like you can't fabricate it. You must develop it. You must begin. So the only way that I could have got to the idiom on this podcast that I have now, and I've had several people in different circumstances talk to me lately about just how comfortable I seem to be talking and how articulate I can be in an interview scenario or in a presentation. Well, yeah, I've done 250 podcasts. A solid 200 of those have been solo. So I've spent 200 hours practicing speaking. Of course, it's going to be better when I'm actually speaking in public or if I'm being interviewed or something like that. I couldn't have got here from the beginning, though. I had to do bad episodes, or I had to do episodes that were less articulate, let's say, or didn't flow the same way, or didn't have this personality that had to be developed over time. And I say this to podcasting people all the time. You will develop an idiom, but you can't develop an idiom without putting in the reps to get there. So begin. And we pull the famous quote from Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. That's Goethe, the famous German writer, maybe the most famous German writer. And I have a fun Goethe connection. The reason I was going back looking through my tour blogs is because when I re-encountered that quote by Goethe, it just twigged a little memory in my mind. It's like I wrote about him. I wrote about him somewhere along the way on one of those tour blogs. It took me a couple hours, but I actually found it. The 2018 Sarah Smith tour blog, the entry titled Schmoln. We played this really great little joint in Schmoln, Germany. And I just remembered and I found the passage. And I'm going to read it out of sheer self-indulgence because it's fun. I mean, I have 3 tour blogs that still exist on my website. At least for now, I'm considering a website revamp that might take some of these down because they're getting to be old now, 2017, 18, 19. 2017, of course, as you know, was published as a book, November, A Month in Europe with Sarah Smith, of which I don't think there are many copies left. I think I might have 1 or 2. But the tour blogs still exist on my website. And I was twigged to this entry I wrote the day after we played Schmoln, Germany in 2018. I wrote, if you will allow me to be so self-indulgent, how interesting can all of this be for you, I wonder? I alluded yesterday to the reality of this odd life we live. We play for a couple hours every day, but otherwise, it's a relatively quiet stream of hours and minutes. Now, that may or may not have been the case for the Joys. That's a band that Ken and Sarah were in before. Heck of a interesting, colorful band they were. I'll continue. That may or may not have been the case for the Joys, but for us as older, wiser people, it's a kind of daily grind that I try to write about in a way that makes it compelling. At this moment, I'm sitting in a laundromat in Weimar, Germany, waiting for the washer I'm sharing with Denny to finish its cycle. And you know, I'm wondering if the writer Goethe, Weimar's favorite son, sat in this very laundromat 200 years ago, typing about the peculiar novelty of his humdrum day-to-day. No, probably not. Why do I read that? Because it's fun, and I had this weird connection to the writer Goethe. In a German laundromat in Weimar, Germany. And I'll tell you this right now, German washing machines, and in particular German dryers, will destroy your clothes. So if you're a band touring in Europe, do your best to avoid laundromats because those dryers will ravage your friggin' clothes. It was fun for me to look through those tour blogs, and it's the same principle in action. Just a tour blog every day. 1,000 words. Usually it worked out to be 1,000, 1,100. And just day by day, over time, all of a sudden, you've got this body of work. And it's the same with your physical body. It's the same with any piece of art. It is the same with anything you're trying to build. It is just a slow accumulation over time, which is the product of continued daily diligent work. So take that into 2026 with you, whatever it is you're working on. Daily practice or close to it. Don't worry about the big picture end product. Just keep accumulating those pages. Keep accumulating those episodes. Keep accumulating that practice time. Keep accumulating those writing sessions. And then one day you will pop up and realize you've reached the target. You've reached the goal. Don't let it overwhelm you from the beginning. All right? Go into 2026 optimistic. I know that can be hard, especially with the political climate. I know it feels very, very difficult to be optimistic about 2026, but I am. I am so optimistic about 2026. This time next year, I anticipate being able to talk about a much different life and a much happier, a much more joyful, easy life. I anticipate things being a lot different and really, really wonderful. I hope for and anticipate that for you as well. For some of you, it may mean pushing through some fear. I'm here to tell you that what you want awaits you on the other side. I say it over and over and over because that is my fundamental message. Good things happen when you put yourself out there, and everything you want awaits on the other side of fear. So face the fear with faith. Face the fear with virtue, with hope, and with faith. If you're going out tonight, you now know the words to Auld Lang Syne. You can thank me for that later. If it is New Year's Day, indulge it. Indulge the silent majesty of a New Year's Day. Indulge the silence if you're in it. Sit yourself down. As I've said on recent episodes, think about what you really want in your life in 2026 and choose it. Choose it. Thank you for accompanying me on now 251 episodes. If anybody's looking for a late Christmas present for me, Apple ratings and reviews are most welcome. I also have some new merch. I got a beanie. I got some Semi-Eloquent t-shirts. I got the mugs. john-huff.com/shop. Thank you for your support. I hope you've had a wonderful holiday season. I may or may not be back next week. I might defer my kind of week off until the first week of the year. We'll see. See if anything jumps at me. Until then, thank you again for all of your support. I hope you are about to have a wonderful New Year's Eve or had one, and do enjoy that peculiar, perfect reverence of New Year's Day. And I will talk to you again very soon.